The galaxy was vast, ancient, and proud. Countless empires stretched across the stars, their banners flying over thousands of worlds. They carried themselves with elegance, dignity, and arrogance, for they believed they had already seen everything worth seeing in the universe. When humanity first appeared among them, it was almost a joke. The first human ships were small and awkward. Their engines roared too loudly, their shields flickered, and their weapons seemed little more than fireworks compared to the mighty cannons of alien dreadnoughts. To the older species, these new arrivals looked like children playing with tools far beyond their understanding. At the Galactic Council, the gathering place of hundreds of civilizations, humans arrived with hope in their hearts. They thought this meeting would be their chance to find allies, to share knowledge, and to prove that Earth, too, could stand among the stars. But what greeted them was not respect. It was laughter. The insectoid Kashar, with their glittering mandibles, clicked mockingly when they saw human suits of armor. Metal toys, they hissed, too soft to survive real war. The tall, graceful Arindari, who had lived for millennia, waved their hands and laughed in musical tones. Short-lived species, they said. You burn bright, but you fade too quickly. Why waste time on mayflies? Even the cold mechanical Varkon machines, who rarely expressed emotion, released harsh buzzing sounds that translated to ridicule. Illogical design. Weak engines. Waste of resources. Everywhere humans went, they were met with smirks, chuckles, and mocking whispers. They were called apes, animals, noisy children, and sometimes simply the joke of the stars. Still, the humans endured. They smiled through the humiliation, even as they clenched their fists in private. They listened carefully, recording every insult, every sneer, every dismissive gesture. What the galaxy did not understand was this: humanity had been mocked before. On Earth, they had mocked one another for centuries, by race, by creed, by nation. They had been divided, broken, and scarred. And yet each time they had risen again. The stars were no different. When alien traders came to Earth, they expected submission. Instead, they found persistence. Humans worked long hours in the harshest environments. They built colonies on barren rocks and frozen moons where no alien would dare to live. They mined resources tirelessly, traded with patience, and learned alien technology piece by piece. The galaxy laughed. But humanity was listening. Humanity was learning, and humanity remembered. One evening, inside the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, a human ambassador stood among hundreds of alien delegates. His name was Marcus Hale, a man with gray hair, sharp eyes, and a steady voice. He carried Earth's flag with pride, even though whispers followed him like shadows. When it was his turn to speak, he said simply, "Humanity seeks peace. Humanity seeks cooperation. We do not wish to rule or conquer. We only wish to build a place among the stars." His words were calm. His tone was respectful. But the response was cruel. The chamber echoed with laughter. Alien voices in every shape and sound mocked the ambassador's plea. Some clapped their hands sarcastically. Others clicked their mandibles. One delegate shouted, "The apes think they belong here." Marcus Hale did not shout back. He did not show anger. He simply nodded, gathered his papers, and walked away. But deep inside, his heart was burning. Not with hate, but with resolve. When he returned to Earth, he told his people the truth. He did not hide the laughter, the insults, or the arrogance. He told them plainly, "They will never respect us unless we make them, and one day they will see." And so humanity began to prepare, not in the open, not under the gaze of the council, but in the silence of space, behind the storms of Jupiter, under the red dust of Mars, and in hidden stations drifting near Saturn's rings. Humanity built in secret. The galaxy thought Earth was only struggling to keep up. In truth, Earth was uniting like never before. For the first time in history, the nations of Earth put aside their differences. Old rivals shook hands. Enemies became allies. It was no longer about flags or borders. It was about survival, pride, and the future of their species. The laughter of the galaxy had cut deep into human hearts. But instead of breaking them, it had forged them into steel. And somewhere, deep inside those secret shipyards, a massive shadow was taking form. It was not yet complete. Its hull was unfinished, its weapons untested. But the idea had been born, and with every hammer strike, every welded beam, every line of code written by exhausted engineers, that idea grew stronger. The galaxy thought humanity was a joke. But humanity had already decided. the joke would end. One day soon, the stars would witness not laughter, but fear. Humanity's first steps into the stars were clumsy, but they were determined. Colonies began to spread, small at first. Tiny outposts on moons, mining stations on asteroids, and fragile domes on distant planets. To humans, these were miracles. To the galaxy, they were nothing. The older empires looked at these colonies the way a giant looks at ants. They tolerated them, sometimes traded with them, but never respected them. When human freighters passed through alien space, they were forced to pay heavy taxes. When disputes happened, human captains were ignored. If an alien patrol seized human cargo without cause, there was no court, no justice, only silence. To the Galactic Council, Earth was weak. A small species with no real power, a fragile guest at the table of giants. But humanity endured. On Earth, the old divisions of politics and borders began to fade. The humiliation of being treated like children by aliens united them in a way nothing else had before. No nation wanted to be seen as a pawn. No leader wanted to explain why their people were mocked in front of the galaxy. So for the first time in history, humanity moved as one. They formed a united government for space affairs, the United Earth Directorate. Its leaders were not kings or tyrants, but chosen representatives from every corner of Earth. Their task was simple, but heavy, to protect humanity's future among the stars. It was not easy. Resources were stretched thin. Every new colony meant risk. On barren rocks, men and women worked in freezing mines far from the sun. On desert planets, children grew up under artificial skies, breathing recycled air. On frontier stations, life was fragile, one system failure away from death. And yet the colonies did not fail. The spirit of humanity, stubborn, restless, and unyielding, kept them alive. Farmers grew crops in soil mixed with alien dust. Engineers repaired ships with whatever scraps they had. Families learned to sing under strange stars, finding hope even in exile. The galaxy noticed, but still, they did not respect it. Primitive apes, the Kashar sneered. Hardy, yes, but still weak, the Arendari said. They survive, but they will never thrive, the Varkan machines calculated. The mockery continued, but humanity no longer cared about words. Humanity had chosen action. Behind closed doors, Earth scientists worked with desperation. Every piece of alien technology was studied, dismantled, and rebuilt. Every scrap of knowledge traded or stolen was used to improve human ships. And in the far reaches of the solar system, great projects began. On Saturn's moons, vast shipyards were built under ice and stone, hidden from alien eyes. On Mars, entire cities were repurposed into factories that produced weapons and engines. In the orbit of Jupiter, secret labs tested experimental drives, pushing human ships faster and farther than before. It was humanity's greatest secret. They were not just surviving. They were preparing. At first, these projects were small. A faster engine, a stronger shield, a longer-range cannon. But soon something larger took shape. Designs for a warship unlike anything humanity had built before. It would be bigger than an aircraft carrier, heavier than any battleship of Earth's past, and armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen. To most humans, this was just a rumor, a whisper shared in dimly lit bars on frontier stations, a dream, a legend, but for those working in the hidden shipyards it was very real. Every day they labored in silence, knowing the galaxy would laugh if they knew. But one day the laughter would end. Still, humanity's position remained fragile. Their fleets were small and their colonies scattered. Every time an alien empire sneezed, humanity felt the storm. Their trade routes were constantly raided, their diplomats constantly humiliated, their lives constantly at risk. And yet, instead of breaking, humanity hardened. The pain of being ignored became fuel. The shame of being mocked became determination. Admiral John Caro, one of the first leaders of the United Earth Directorate, once told his crew, "They call us fragile. They call us weak. But glass is fragile too until you drive it into someone's heart. Let them laugh. Every day they laugh, we sharpen ourselves. One day we will be too sharp to hold." His words spread quietly through the colonies, whispered in mess halls and recited in schools. Humanity clung to them, believing in a future no one else could see. The galaxy thought humans were barely holding on. But beneath the surface, humanity was becoming something else, something patient, something dangerous. In every insult there was a lesson, in every loss there was a spark, in every humiliation there was a promise, and that promise was this: humanity would not remain fragile forever. One day, when the time was right, the galaxy would see the truth, and when that day came, no amount of laughter could save them. For centuries, the galaxy had balanced on a thin edge of peace. The great empires, the Arendari Dominion, the Kashar Hives, and the Varkon Collective, kept each other in check. None dared to strike too hard because each feared the others. Smaller species like humanity lived in the cracks between giants. But balance never lasts forever. The first spark began far from Earth. A trade dispute between the Arendari and the Kashar turned violent. A skirmish in empty space soon became a full war. Fleets moved, planets burned, and the balance of power shattered. For the great empires, it was another cycle of history. For the smaller ones, it was disaster. Human colonies were caught in the middle. Freighters carrying food were stopped, their cargo stolen. Settlements on neutral planets were bombed without warning. Thousands of innocent people died in battles they had no part in. The Galactic Council told humanity to stay quiet. "This is not your war," they said. "Remain neutral. Accept the cost." But neutrality meant death. The colony of Haven 4, built on the edge of Kashar space, was the first to fall. The Kashar had claimed it was nesting ground and sent their fleets without warning. Haven 4 was home to 40,000 people, farmers, miners, families with children. When the attack came, the defenses lasted only minutes. The screams of the colonists were cut short as fire consumed the skies. News of Haven 4 spread fast, but the Council did nothing. To them, it was a minor loss. To humanity, it was a wound that would never heal. Still, Earth tried to stay peaceful. Leaders sent messages begging for recognition, pleading for protection. They were ignored. Then came the darkest day. The colony of New Kyoto was humanity's pride, a shining city under a glass dome with lakes, gardens, and towers that reached toward alien suns. It was home to 3 million souls. For years, it had been proof that humans could thrive among the stars. One morning, an Arendari fleet appeared in orbit. They claimed New Kyoto had aided the enemy by trading food with Kashar refugees. The punishment was swift. They bombed the city. For hours, fire rained from the sky. Buildings shattered, families burned, and screams filled the comm channels until they went silent. The dome collapsed, and with it the hope of 3 million human lives. When the fleet left, nothing remained but ash and silence. The galaxy shrugged. The Council looked away. The Arendari called it necessary cleansing. But Earth did not look away. Humanity wept. Humanity screamed. Humanity broke. In that moment, something changed. No more peace. No more patience. No more silence. The United Earth Directorate gathered in an emergency session. The leaders of every nation stood together, their faces pale with grief and burning with fury. There was no debate, no hesitation. The decision was clear: humanity declared war. The announcement echoed across the stars. For the first time, Earth raised its voice not in begging, but in rage. The galaxy laughed. Admirals of alien fleets scoffed at the idea. What can humans do? They have no real ships, no real armies. Diplomats shook their heads. They are children throwing stones at giants. Even allies of humanity sighed. This war will end before it begins. But they did not understand. For humans, war was not new. It was written into their blood, into their history, into every scar their species carried. They had fought each other for millennia, with swords, with guns, with bombs. They knew loss. They knew grief. And they knew how to turn pain into fire. The galaxy thought humans would surrender quickly. But humanity was not fighting for power. They were fighting for survival, for pride, for every soul lost on Haven 4 and New Kyoto. Admiral John Caro spoke to the first assembled human fleet before they launched. They think this war will end us. They think we are fragile. But let me remind you, fragile things can cut the deepest. They took our homes. They killed our children. They laughed while we buried our dead. Today we stop being a joke. Today we fight. His words were broadcast not just to soldiers, but to every colony, every station, every child hiding in fear. And when they heard them, humanity stood together like never before. Factories thundered. Engineers worked without sleep. Families donated their savings to the war effort. Volunteers lined up to fight, not because they wanted glory, but because they had lost too much to remain silent. Humanity had never been united like this. And deep in the hidden shipyards near Saturn's rings, the Great Shadow was nearly complete. The warship that had been whispered about in secret for years was finally ready to show its face. The galaxy thought this war would crush humanity. But in truth, this war had awakened something the galaxy had never seen before, something dangerous, something unbreakable, something human. The galaxy expected an easy victory. When humanity declared war, alien commanders gathered their fleets with amusement. To them, it was like swatting flies. They expected human ships to scatter, human colonies to fall within days, and Earth itself to kneel within weeks. So they came. The first invasion fleet was enormous. Hundreds of alien ships, sleek Arendari cruisers, swarming Kashar hive carriers, and cold Varkon machine frigates moved toward human space like a tidal wave. Their weapons glowed, their engines thundered. They did not come for negotiation. They came to erase humanity before it could cause trouble. Against them stood only a handful of human ships. Old destroyers, light cruisers, and freighters hastily fitted with cannons. They were brave but fragile. Even the human captains admitted in private they could not win this battle. The alien admirals laughed as they approached. "End it quickly," one of them ordered. "Let the apes learn their place." And then the stars shifted. Out of the blackness of space, a shadow moved. It was massive, larger than any human ship ever seen before. It emerged slowly as if the darkness itself was giving birth to a giant. The alien fleet hesitated. Their sensors screamed warnings. Their commanders squinted at their screens, uncertain. Then they saw it. The warship was longer than their dreadnoughts, heavier than their carriers, and darker than the void itself. Its hull was black, swallowing the starlight, with edges sharp like a blade. Across its side, painted in white letters for all the galaxy to see, was its name, Uns Vengeance. The laughter of the alien fleet faded into silence. For years, they had mocked humanity, called them primitive, fragile, weak, but the ship before them was no toy, no fragile design. It was a predator built with fury, sharpened by grief, and armed with weapons they did not understand. The alien admirals hesitated. Some thought it was a bluff, a decoy. Others whispered that no ape could build such a monster. But hesitation came too late. The Vengeance opened fire. Its first volley was like thunder. Great beams of light tore across space and ripped through 3 alien cruisers in one instant. Shields shattered. Hulls exploded. The wreckage drifted, glowing with fire. The second volley came before the aliens recovered. A battleship, proud and ancient, split apart like paper. The explosion lit up the fleet, and for the first time in centuries, alien commanders felt something they had almost forgotten. Fear. The Vengeance moved with purpose. It was not clumsy or slow. It turned like a predator hunting its prey. Every shot it fired was precise. Every strike was deadly. Smaller human ships followed in its shadow, faster and sharper than anything aliens had expected. Together, they cut through the invasion fleet like a blade through glass. Alien ships scrambled, trying to regroup, but their weapons barely scratched the Vengeance's armor. Missiles detonated harmlessly against its shields. Energy beams scattered across its hull, leaving nothing but scars. The great fleets of the empires had fought each other for centuries, but never had they seen a weapon like this. It was not just a warship. It was a message. Every strike of the Vengeance said what humanity had been forced to hold back for years. We are not weak. We are not fragile. We are here, and we will not kneel. In less than a day, the invasion fleet that had come to erase Earth was shattered. Hundreds of alien ships were reduced to wrecks. Survivors fled into the void, their laughter turned into desperate screams. The galaxy trembled. On human worlds, the news spread like fire. Children who had lost families on New Kyoto cried tears of pride when they saw the images of the Vengeance tearing enemy fleets apart. Workers in factories cheered, pounding their fists against metal tables. Soldiers saluted the ship even through the broadcast screens, their voices raw with emotion. For the first time, humanity believed not only in survival, but in victory. But even as cheers rang across Earth and its colonies, the leaders of the alien empires sat in silence. They stared at the reports, at the recordings, at the impossible reality of an ape-built warship shattering their fleets. The balance of power that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was broken. The laughter had died. In its place came whispers, spreading through every empire, every council, every throne room. Humans, the species they had mocked, dismissed and humiliated, had built something the galaxy had never seen before, and this was only the beginning. Battle that was supposed to end humanity became the battle that changed the galaxy. When the invasion fleet entered human space, every alien commander expected victory within hours. Yet now all that remained of their armada were burning wrecks drifting silently in the void. The mighty Arendari dreadnoughts lay broken, their shattered hulls scattering across space. The swarms of the Kashar had been torn apart, their hive carriers ripped open. Even the cold, calculating ships of the Varkon machines had fled, their logical minds unable to explain what they had seen. The UNS Vengeance had stood alone against them, and it had won. It did not win with numbers, for humanity had few ships. It did not win with luck, for every strike was precise. It won with something the galaxy had long forgotten, a will sharpened by loss and grief. A fury turned into steel and fire. The news spread across the stars faster than any fleet. On distant worlds, alien civilians whispered in disbelief. Stories of the ape warship traveled from bar to bar, station to station. Some laughed nervously, refusing to believe it. Others lowered their voices in fear, speaking of it as if it were a monster from ancient legends. The empires, once so confident, now sat in silence. Their rulers gathered in shadowed halls, their voices hushed. The Arendari nobles shouted at each other, demanding to know how primitive apes could destroy fleets that had stood for centuries. The Kashar queens hissed in rage, their pride wounded deeper than any wound to their fleets. Even the Varkon machines, who trusted only in numbers and logic, had to admit that their calculations had failed. The balance of power, carefully held for generations, was broken, and humanity had broken it. For the humans themselves, the victory was both joy and sorrow. On Earth, people filled the streets cheering the name of the Vengeance. Children who had cried for their lost families now pointed at the stars with pride, saying, "That is ours. That is humanity's ship." Workers in the shipyard stood taller, their hands blistered from labor but their hearts burning with pride. Yet behind the celebration was pain. The Vengeance had returned scarred. Its hull carried blackened wounds, its shields flickered from overuse, and its crew was exhausted. Many lost in the battle. Thousands of humans had died in the fight. Families wept for their loved ones even as they cheered for the victory. Humanity had struck a blow, but it had paid the price. Still, that price was not wasted. For every tear there was determination. For every grave there was resolve. Humanity would not stop. The war had just begun. Admiral John Caro stood before his officers after the battle. His uniform was torn, his voice tired, but his eyes were sharp. "We did not just win a battle," he told them. "We broke the illusion. For centuries they told us we were weak. For centuries they laughed. Today they learned fear. Remember this moment because the galaxy will never forget it." And the galaxy did not forget. Smaller species, who had also suffered under the arrogance of the great empires, began to look toward Earth with new eyes. Some sent quiet messages of respect. Others sent secret offers of trade, of help, of friendship. For the first time, humanity was not alone. But for the empires, respect was mixed with fear. The Arendari wanted revenge. The Kashar wanted blood. The Varkon machines wanted to study humanity, to understand the anomaly that had shattered their calculations. Whispers filled the council chambers. Some called for war to crush the humans before they grew stronger. Others called for peace, fearing that another battle might end just as badly as the last. For the first time in centuries, the empires could not agree. The balance had been shattered, and humanity was at the center of the storm. On the colonies, families rebuilt. Factories worked without pause. Every worker knew they were part of something larger now. Every soldier knew they carried not just weapons, but the pride of an entire species. And in the secret shipyards, more shadows began to rise. The Vengeance would not be alone for long. For humanity, the path was clear. There was no going back to silence, no returning to being the galaxy's joke. They had shown their strength, and now they would hold their ground no matter the cost. The laughter of the galaxy was gone. In its place came something far more powerful: fear, respect, and the first sparks of change. And above it all, the UNS Vengeance drifted silently through space, a scarred giant, a dark blade, a symbol of everything humanity had endured and everything it was becoming. The galaxy had mocked humanity, but now, the galaxy trembled. Victory was never free. Humanity had learned that truth long before it reached the stars. And now, even after the triumph of the UNS Vengeance, that lesson returned with sharp teeth. The battle had been won, yes. The invasion fleet was gone. The galaxy trembled at the thought of humanity's power. But when the warship returned to human space, it did not return whole. Its black hull was torn and scarred, glowing faintly from melted steel. Great sections of its armor were missing. Entire decks had been burned through, and long trails of smoke and debris still followed in its wake. Inside, the crew was broken. Thousands had died keeping the ship alive, holding their posts until fire consumed them, refusing to abandon their duty even as alarms screamed in their ears. The survivors staggered through the halls like ghosts, uniforms stained with ash and blood. Some were missing limbs. Some carried burns across their faces and arms. Many carried wounds deeper than flesh. Memories of screams over the comms, of friends lost in sudden flashes of light. When the Vengeance landed in orbit above Earth, people cheered. They sang, they cried, they shouted the ship's name to the stars. But as the soldiers disembarked, limping and silent, the cheers turned into tears. Families rushed forward, searching desperately for faces they might never see again. Mothers fell to their knees when sons did not return. Children clutched at uniforms that would never be worn again. Victory had come, but the price was written in graves. Across Earth and the colonies, the lists of the dead were read aloud. The names filled screens, pages upon pages, endless lines of loss. Every family knew someone who would not come home. Every city had holes that could not be filled. And yet, as the grief spread, so too did resolve. The people of Earth did not break. They mourned, but they did not surrender. In fact, the pain hardened them further. Factories worked day and night, not just to repair the Vengeance, but to build more. Engineers pushed themselves past exhaustion. Scientists pored over alien technology with red, sleepless eyes. Every worker whispered the same words as they labored. For Haven 4, for New Kyoto, for the fallen. Admiral John Caro stood before the Galactic Council after the battle. His face was pale with exhaustion, but his voice was steady. You told us to stay silent. You told us to accept the loss of our people. You told us peace meant bowing while you burned our colonies, no more. You call us fragile, but fragile things cut the deepest when broken. You thought we would kneel. Instead, we stand. We are not asking for peace. We are demanding respect. The council chamber fell silent. No one laughed this time. The arrogance that once filled those halls was gone, replaced by unease. For the first time, the rulers of the galaxy saw humanity not as children, but as equals, and perhaps as a threat. But humanity was not blinded by victory. They knew the war was not over. The empires would not forget their humiliation. The Arendari wanted vengeance for their lost dreadnoughts. The Kashar queens would not forgive the slaughter of their hive carriers. The Varkon machines would not rest until they understood what had gone wrong in their perfect calculations. Humanity's survival had been bought with blood, and more would be demanded. In the quiet nights, when the cheering was gone and only silence remained, grief pressed heavily on the human heart. Soldiers sat alone, staring at medals they did not want. Widows held empty hands where warmth used to be. Children asked questions no parent could answer. Why did they take New Kyoto? Why did they hate us? Will it happen again? And always the answer was the same. Because we are human. Because they thought we were weak. Because we must never let it happen again. The UN's Vengeance became a symbol. Its scars were not hidden, they were shown proudly. Every burn, every wound on its hull told the story of sacrifice. Children painted its image on walls. Workers wore badges with its name. Soldiers whispered prayers before battle, calling on its strength. But behind the pride was always the memory of the cost. Humanity carried both together, the glory and the grief, the triumph and the tears. The galaxy had expected humanity to fade. Instead, humanity grew sharper with every wound. Yes, victory had come at a heavy price, but humanity was willing to pay it. Because they knew the alternative, silence, submission, and death, was far worse. The laughter of the galaxy was gone forever. In its place was respect, fear, and the knowledge that humans were no longer to be ignored. They had shown their fury. They had paid the price, and they would pay it again if they had to, because humanity was not done. Not yet. Years passed, but the shadow of that first war never left humanity. The scars of battle could still be seen in every city, every home, and every heart. Humanity had bled, but from that blood a new fire was born. The UNS Vengeance had not been scrapped after its victory. Instead, it was rebuilt piece by piece, stronger than before. Its wounds were sealed with new steel, its broken decks restored. But the scars were left visible so no one would forget. To the galaxy, the Vengeance was a nightmare that shattered their arrogance. To humanity, it was a monument of sacrifice, a reminder that courage and unity could turn the tide of history. Children who had once cried in fear of alien warships now dreamed of serving aboard human ones. They grew up hearing the stories of Captain Reyes and Admiral Caro, of engineers who worked until their hands bled, of soldiers who fought even as fire consumed their lungs. In classrooms across Earth and the colonies, teachers would point to the image of the Vengeance and say, "This is what it means to be human, to fight when the world says you cannot, to endure when the stars themselves laugh at you." The galaxy had changed as well. The great empires no longer mocked humanity. They watched instead, silent and wary, as the once ignored species built fleets that filled the void. Where once humans were seen as fragile and harmless, now they were whispered about with respect and fear. But humanity did not seek conquest. They had no desire to burn alien worlds or enslave alien people. Their war had never been about power. It had been about survival, about protecting their homes and their children. That truth became their strength. And yet peace was fragile. Every empire remembered the humiliation. The Arendari lords, once drunk with pride, spoke of vengeance in hushed tones. The Kashar queens, their hives burned to ash, plotted in silence. Even the cold Varkon machines recalculated their plans, trying to solve the human problem that should not have existed. Humanity knew another war was coming. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, and they would be ready. The fleets of Earth grew. New warships were forged in the shipyards of Mars and Titan, their black hulls shining like blades. Each ship carried a name etched with meaning: defiance, unity, horizon, eternity. And above them all, still leading, still inspiring, was the Vengeance. It was no longer just a warship. It was a symbol. Wherever it went, colonies felt safe. Whenever it appeared, enemies hesitated. The galaxy had many dreadnoughts, many fleets, many weapons, but none had a story like the Vengeance. None carried the weight of a people's unbroken will. Admiral John Caro grew older, his hair turning silver, but he never stopped reminding his people of the cost. Standing before vast crowds, he would point to the stars and say, "Do not mistake pride for invincibility. The Vengeance is not a gift, it is a burden. It carries the names of the dead. It reminds us that survival has a price. But as long as it sails, humanity will never kneel." And the people believed him. One night, when Earth's skies were calm and the stars bright, Captain Reyes stood alone in the rebuilt command deck of the Vengeance. His hand brushed the cold steel of the consoles. He remembered the screams, the fire, the endless darkness of that terrible battle. He remembered the faces of those who had not made it home. For a long moment, he closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek, then he whispered so softly only the ship itself could hear, "We carried you this far. Now carry them with you always." The Vengeance's engines roared to life as if answering. Generations later, humanity still told the story. They told it around campfires on new worlds, in classrooms orbiting alien suns, and in council chambers where peace was debated. They told it not to glorify war, but to remind themselves what it meant to endure, what it meant to rise when all others expected them to fall. The story always began the same way. The galaxy laughed at humanity. They called us weak, fragile, foolish dreamers. And maybe we were. But when they came to burn our homes, when they came to erase us, we built a ship. We built the UNS Vengeance. And with it we shattered the balance of the stars. And always the story ended with the same words. Humanity is small. Humanity is fragile. But humanity will never break. The laughter of the galaxy was gone. In its place was silence, respect, and the weight of a promise. That no matter how dark the night became, humanity would always rise again. The UNS Vengeance sailed on, scarred but unyielding, carrying the legacy of a species that had proven, once and for all, that it belonged among the stars.